A good tavach. I cannot hear you because I think you're muted.
Okay, now I'm not muted.
Gewaldig. A good tavach. Okay, so we are up to Daf Dalet Amud Aleph, and we're 7 lines down from the bottom, from the top. Okay, so where we're holding, we should have to do a little bit of an inventory to remember where we're holding. We had a halach in the Mishnah that Hamevi get Medina Sayom, you have to say Befani Nechtav or Befani Nechtam. And we had a machloikis between Rava and Rabba. Why? Rabba said the reason why you need to say Befani Nechtav or Befani Nechtam is to make sure that it was written Lishma. But he says both Befani Nechtav and Befani Nechtam, which would mean that the Ksiva has to be Lishma and the Chasima has to be Lishma. The Gemara was looking for a Tana who holds that they both have to be Lishma. The Gemara said, Reb Meir says the Chasima has to be Lishma, but not the Ksiva. Rabba holds that the Ksiva has to be Lishma, but not the Chasima. So who holds that you need both? So the Gemara ended up saying that it's going according to Rabba Lazar, who holds that the Ksiva has to be Lishma and not the Chasima. But you don't need to have chasima. But if Adam do sign, then they have to be perfect. So if Adam do sign, then they have to be lishma. So if the get was brought and the get had no chasimas, you wouldn't need to say befani nechtam. But since this get happens to have signatures on it, because of that, the aid has to say befani nechtam, because since Adam did sign, the Adam have to be perfect, and therefore they had to have done it lishma. And that's where we're up to now. Rav Ashi, which is the 7th line on Dalet Amud Aleph, we found one solution to say that according to the way Rabba understood the Mishnah, that the Befani Nechtav and the Befani Nechtam was lishma. According to Rabbi Lazar, you could say that although midaraisa you only need the ksiva to be lishma, if there is a chasima, the chasima has to be lishma as well. Rav Ashi is a much simpler pshat as to why both the ksiva and the chasima has to be lishma. Hamani Rabbi Yehuda. It's not Reb Meir who says only the chasima needs to be lishma. It's not Rabbi Lazar who says only the ksiva needs to be lishma. It's Rabbi Yehuda who holds that they both need to be lishma. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Poisel achet hey kesivasoi the chasimasoi betalish. When we originally quoted Reb Meir's shita, Reb Meir said that even if the get was written on a leaf that was attached to a tree, and after you wrote the get, you cut the leaf off the tree, and then Adam signed, that would be a kosher get. However, Rabbi Yehuda says if the get was written on a leaf that was still connected to the tree, that get would be possible, because the ksiva would not have been a kosher ksiva, unless during the ksiva the leaf was already tolish, and then naturally by the chasima it would have been tolish as well. So for the Gemara, it's so much more simple to understand the Mishnah according to Rabbah that it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda. So for the Gemara, my time Rabbi Yehuda. Why did the Gemara struggle so much to try to say the Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Meir? And when that didn't work, the Gemara tried to say it's going according to Rabbi Elazar. Why was the Gemara struggling so much? It could have simply said that the Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yehuda. Zok the Gemara, there's a reason why the Gemara would have preferred to say that the Mishnah either is going according to Rabbi Meir or according to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Meir, why did we want to first say that the Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Meir? This Stamas Nisin, Rabbi Meir, Stamas Nisin is Rabbi Meir. We know whenever a Mishnah is quoted without a Tana, it's usually Rabbi Meir. The first Mishnah in our Masechta, in fact, doesn't quote a Tana. Maybe get Medina Sayom, Tzarech Loimar, Befani Nechtam. So it's logical to say that's going according to Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara was trying to see if it would fit in according to Rabbi Meir. The Gemara did not succeed. And then after that didn't work, Madrin and Rabbi Elazar. The Gemara said, okay, it's not going according to Rabbi Meir, but maybe it's going according to Rabbi Elazar. Why do we want to still on like Rabbi Elazar? The Kaim Alon, Hilchazah Kavasei Begittin. Because we pass on like Rabbi Elazar Begittin, and Rashi says in this specific Shaila, In fact, halach is you don't need edim on the get. We pass like Rabbi Lozer, edim mesir karsi, and a get without any edim is kosher. So since we pass like Rabbi Lozer, it's more gishmak to say that our Mishnah is going aliba de hilchasa, that our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Lozer. And in fact, the Gemara did succeed, saying that a Mishnah could go according to Rabbi Lozer. But Rabbi Ashi only as a last resort said that the Mishnah would be going according to Rabbi Yehuda. Beautiful. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Rabban Gamliel Omer. Rabbi Gamliel said, "Afa maybe minarekev u'minacheger." So let's just refresh our memories about what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah brings down the shita of the Tanakama that says if you bring a get, maybe didn't say yom, you have to say b'fani nechta b'fani nechta. If we just look at that halacha, it will tell us that here's the border. Anything inside Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to say b'fani nechta b'fani nechta, and anything that's over the border, you do have to say b'fani nechta b'fani nechta. Rabbi Gamliel argued on the Tanakama, and he said, "Af hamevi min harekem u'min hacheger." Even if you brought a get from rekem and cheger, even that you have to say b'fani nechta b'fani nechta. Now that would tell us that the Chachamim hold, the Tanakama would hold, you don't need to say b'fani nechta if you brought the get from rekem and cheger. And we're soon going to see rekem and cheger are two cities that were right over the border. They were right out of Eretz Yisrael. Gamliel says, since they're on the other side of the border, you have to say b'fani nechta b'fani nechta. For some reason, the Tanakama holds that since they're really close to the border, even though they're not in Eretz Yisrael, they're also exempt. And we're going to soon see why. Rabbi Eliezer is even more machmir. Rabbi Eliezer, marafilu mi kfar ludim lelud, even from kfar ludim lelud, where we're going to see there's a distinction that's even closer than rekem and cheger. Amar Abaye, and Abaye explained what precisely is the machlokes here between the Tanakama, Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer. Bayaris hasmuchus le'eretz Yisrael umavlois betchum Eretz Yisrael askina. We're talking about cities that are very close to Eretz Yisrael, and even muvlois betchum. Now, muvlois betchum does not mean within 2,000 amas from Shabbos. What it means is, Rashi explains as follows: there's an eastern border to Eretz Yisrael. We know the western border is the Mediterranean, but the eastern border to Eretz Yisrael is a line, a north-south line. But Dr. Rashi, it's not a straight line north-south. Rather, the Torah tells us, it gives us a list of cities that are on the east side of Eretz Yisrael, lining them up from north to south. Now, these cities are not lined up in a straight line. Some cities are further to the east, some cities are further to the west. So when you're drawing the line that's the border, it's like a dot to dot. We used to do when we were kids. And it's going back and forth, like a houndstooth, back and forth, which means there's a series of V's where the points of the V are in Eretz Yisrael, but the inside of the V is not in Eretz Yisrael. For instance, if this was one city, this was another city, and this was a third city, so the border would go like this, which means a Goyish city that was smack in here was literally surrounded on three sides by Eretz Yisrael. That's called muvlois betchum. So let's go back and have a look. We're talking about cities that are close to Eretz Yisrael, and some that are so close that they're even muvlois betchum, they're in those V's. Betchum Eretz Yisrael askina. The Amar Rabba bar Bachana. And the Rabba bar Bachana even said how close these cities are. I actually saw one of these close cities. It's the distance from Mibei Kubi Lepumbedisa. I wasn't sure how far that was, but if you scroll down to the Likutei Rashi, which I don't have on this daf over here, we have Moisef Rashi. So Moisef Rashi says over here, I don't see it over here, but it is in some of the Gemaras. The Moisef Rashi says that the distance is from Beit Kubi to Pumbedisa, which is the distance, it's a distance about 6 mil, which is between 9 and 11 miles, is I think how the ArScroll says it. So that's how close they were. So now the Gemara goes to list off what the three shitas are. Michlal, the Tanakama Savar, since the Tanakama says that all these places, you don't need to say b'fani nechta, they hold Hani Loy Tzarech. Rabbi Gamliel said Rekem and Cheger is needed. Rabba Lazar said that the Kvalud and Lud is needed. Vaitaros, the Tanakama hold that none of these cities would you need to say b'fani nechta. So let's think. What would the Machlokas be telling? Why should those cities that are close but out of Eretz Yisrael, why should you need to say b'fani nechta, like Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Lazar, or why would you not need to say it like the Chachamim? So let's say my lab the Ma'asavar Lefi She'ein B'Kiyin Lishma. Let's say that the Tanakama who holds that these cities that are close to Eretz Yisrael don't require b'fani nechta. They learned that the reason why it's necessary is because of Lishma, like Rabba. Bahani Gemiri, and these cities, since they're so close to Eretz Yisrael, their people are educated, and people know that it has to be Lishma. Umar Saber, but Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Lezer holds, Levisha Ein Adam Etzuna Kaima. They're like Rava. The reason why you need to say b'fani nechtam is because there's a border in between. People can't get back and forth, and we won't be able to be mekayim the get. And these cities that are outside the borders of Eretz Yisrael, even though they're very close to Eretz Yisrael, nevertheless, we still don't have a lot of traffic in between the two cities. Now, this would pose a problem, because Rava and Rabba don't want to be totally in a machlokes tanoim. Rava will be able to explain the machlokes based on everybody holding that the shaila is about the Shema. For Rava matar tamei, and Rava will be able to explain the machlokes if everybody holds that the question is kiyum. Rabba matar tamei. Rabba would explain the Mishnah this way: the chula alma, everybody holds lefi she'ein b'kiyin l'shma. Everybody holds the reason to say b'fani nechtam and b'fani nechtam is because we're afraid the get wasn't written or signed l'shma. So what's the machlokes? Tanakama Sover, the Tanakama who holds that these nearby cities do not require b'fani nechtam hold hani given the smuchis migmar gemiri. Since they're very close to Eretz Yisrael, chances are the knowledge spread there, and they're aware that you need lishma, and therefore we don't need to say b'fani nechtam. But Rabbi Gamliel would say muvlois gemiri. If it's a city that's in the V, surrounded by three sides by Eretz Yisrael, they'll be influenced by Eretz Yisrael. They will know it needs to be Lishma. And I agree with you, Tanakama, that those don't need b'fani nechta. But smuchos, but if it's just near the border of Eretz Yisrael, but it's not within those V's, those people would not have been familiar with Lishma, and therefore we have to be concerned about Lishma. And therefore, if you come from Rekem and Cheger, which are near but not within the V, those would require b'fani nechtav and b'fani nechtav. And Rabbi Eliezer came with the biggest chumrah, and he said even the v'lois nami, even those cities that are within the V, surrounded on three sides by Eretz Yisrael, also loy, they also do have to say b'fani nechtav, shaloi sachloik b'medina sayah. And Rashi makes it very clear. Rabbi Eliezer says, I agree with you, Rabbi Gamliel. In those areas, for sure, everybody knows about Lishma. So why are we enforcing b'fani nechtam? Because you can't start making differences. You can't say, this city in Chutz La'aretz, they have to say b'fani nechtam. This city, they don't. Then everyone's going to think they're the exception. So you have to have a one hard and fast rule. If you're in Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to say b'fani nechtam. But if you're not in Eretz Yisrael, you do have to say, and it keeps the Gzeira simple. Rava could also explain that everybody holds the reason for b'fani nechtam is only because of kiyum shtaris. And the machlokes would be described as follows: the chula amal lefi she'ein edim etzun l'kaima. Everybody agrees the reason for the gzeira is because of ein edim etzun l'kaima. The Tanakama Sober, the Tanakama holds, hani, these cities, given the smuchos, even though there's a border in between them, but since they're very close, mishkach shchichi, people get through the border. If it's close by, even in a sealed border, people get through. Yosy Rabba Gamliel, and Rabba Gamliel came along and said, Muvloi shchichi, cities that are surrounded on three sides from Eretz Yisrael, there people are going to get through the border. But Tzmuchai, cities that are a little further away, Lo shchichi, there's not going to be too many people sneaking through the border. And therefore, Rabbi Gamliel said those people need to say b'fani nechtav, b'fani nechtav. The same as far as before, Uvlois nami require b'fani nechtav loy shletachlik b'medinas hayam. Even though technically people do get back and forth from those cities, but we have to keep it crisp and clear. Anything out of Eretz Yisrael does need to say b'fani nechtav, b'fani nechtav. Beautiful. So now we learned the next shtickle of the Mishnah. We learned the machlokes from Rabbi Gamliel and from Elazar. Now we're going to continue to the next line of the Mishnah. The next line of the Mishnah said, "V'chachamim omer, einay tzarich, sheyoymar b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam, ela hamevi b'medinas hayam v'moed." Who has to say b'fani nechtam and b'fani nechtam? Only someone who is either bringing a get to Eretz Yisrael from Medinas Hayam, or someone sending a get from Eretz Yisrael to Medinas Hayam. If this is the sheet of the Tanakama, which is arguing, if this is the sheet of the Chachamim Oimrim, which is clearly arguing on the Tanakama, because it's another sheet that's commenting on the Tanakama, well, Mechlal the Tanakama Savar Moilech Loi. The Tanakama says, maybe get Medinas Hayam, you have to say the Fani Nechtav. The Chachamim say, maybe and Moilech. So this clearly sounds like the Tanakama holds you only need to say b'fani nechtav if you're bringing a get to Eretz Yisrael from Chutz La'aretz. But if you're bringing it from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, then you would not have to say b'fani nechtav or b'fani nechtav. But the Chachamim Oimrim, the last sheet in the Mishnah, holds that both ways require b'fani nechtav or b'fani nechtav. So what would you say the machlokes is about? Mechlal the Tanakama is over moilech loy. Moilech loy tzarich my lab walkamivkli. Let's say this is the machlokes. The Mar Sovar Lefi She'ein V'Kin L'Shma. One Mandamar holds the reason why you have to say b'fani nechtav is because without V'Kin L'Shma, that would be the Tanakama. If the whole problem is that in Chutz La'aretz and not V'Kin L'Shma, well then, if a get is sent from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, I understand you have to say b'fani nechtav. But if you're sending it from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, there shouldn't be a concern because the get was written in Eretz Yisrael, and in Eretz Yisrael they're B'Kin L'Shma. So the Marasar B'Kin L'Shma, the Tanakama holds that the reason why you say B'fani Nechtav is because it's a B'Kin L'Shma, and therefore it's only if you're bringing it from Eretz Yisrael, from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. But if the get was written in Eretz Yisrael, then you shouldn't have to say B'fani Nechtav or B'fani Nechtav. V'Hani Gemiri, and the people of Eretz Yisrael, they know the rules of L'Shma. So there's no need for that get that originated in Eretz Yisrael to need to say b'fani nechtav. Umar Sover, but the Chachamim, who said that both ways require b'fani nechtav and b'fani nechtav, Sover l'vishen edim etzuyin l'kaim. They hold the reason why this is required is because there's no edim to be mekayim. The Hananami and these two, even though they get originated in Eretz Yisrael, lo shchichi. They can't be mekayim because people don't travel back and forth. So once again, the same kasha is posed. It seems like the machlokes Rava and Rabba is a machlokes tonight. And the Gemara says the same teretz as before. Rabba matas l'tamei. Rabba could explain both shittas according to his svara of Lishma. Rava matas l'tamei, and Rava can explain both shittas according to his svara. Rabba matas l'tamei. The chula hamal of ishay b'kim Lishma. Everybody holds side of Tanakama and side of the Chachamim hold. The reason is Ebekim L'Shma. Why did the Chachamim say that even a get originating in Eretz Yisrael requires b'fani nechtam and b'fani nechtam? In Eretz Yisrael they know L'Shma. The whole machlokes is everybody agrees there's really no concern with a get that originated in Eretz Yisrael. But the question is, we make a gzeira in order to make sure that people will always say b'fani nechtam and b'fani nechtam. With a get that originated in Chutz La'aretz, we make a rule that all gittin, even gittin from Eretz Yisrael, require b'fani nechtav b'fani nechtav. The Tanakama Savar lo goshin. The Tanakama says only maybe Medinas Hayam, but not moilech. So they hold lo goshin moilech atu maybe. Rabbanan Basroi and the Chachamim Oimrim Savi goshin moilech atu maybe. Even though a get that you're sending from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, we don't have a shas of L'Shma. But we're going you that you have to say b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam because of a get that originated in Chutz La'aretz that was coming to Eretz Yisrael. That's Rabba's pshat. The Rava mitar tatamei. Rava would be mitar tivoli. Rava says it's all a shayla of kiyum. Kiyum, you need it both ways. So what's pshat? in the Tanakama who seems to say that it's only maybe Mimedina Sayam. The teretz is the Chula Amal of Ishain Adam Mitzuin Lakaima. Edim Mitzuin Lakaima. Everybody else like Nizo trouble. It's a question of Kiyom. And in fact, even the Tanakama agrees to the Rabbanan Basroi that in fact it's both ways. They just said maybe get Medina Sayam. They didn't say Moilech. Precisely. That's why the Chacham came. Rabban Basroi of Rushe Taima the Tanakama Huda also. All the Chachamim are coming to do is not to argue on the Tanakama. They're coming to clarify the Tanakama, to let everybody know it's not only Hamevi Medina Sayam to Eretz Yisrael, it's also Hamoilech Hameretz Yisrael to Medina Sayam. So now we've basically finished the sugya of Rabba and Rava, and the Gemara explains how Rabba understands the whole Mishnah and how Rava understands the whole Mishnah. So I just want to run through it again so we get a little clarity. Rabba said the reason for B'fani Nechtav or B'fani Nechtam is because Ein B'kiyim Lishma. The Gemara, because of that, assumed that according to Rabba, the way he understands the Mishnah, you need both Chesiv Lishma and Chesiv Lishma, and the Gemara struggled to find a Tana who said it. Rabbi Ashi taught us today, that in fact, Rabbi Yehuda holds just like that. But the Gemara also wanted to say that it's going according to Rabbi Lazar, and the Gemara said, even though Rabbi Lazar holds you don't need Chesiva, you don't need Chesiva Lishma, you don't need Chesima at all, but if there is a Chesima, it has to be Lishma. So that's how Rabba understood. That's how Rabba understood why you say B'fani Nechtam. And what is the machlokes between the Tanakama, Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Lazar about which cities are included? The machlokes is very simple. It's all about Lishma. The cities that are really, really close, that are in the V's, they'll know what to talk. They'll know the Lishma. The cities that are a little further, the question is whether or not they'll know the Lishma. That's the question. So the Tanakama said they will all know about Lishma since they're close. There's no need for any of those cities to say B'fani Nechtam, B'fani Nechtam. Rabbi Gamliel says the cities that are in the V, they'll know Lishma. But the cities that are out of the V, like Rechem and Cheger, they're not going to know. And we still need to say B'fani Nechtam or B'fani Nechtam for those. And Rabbi Lazar said, let's not make differences between this city and that city. All Chutz La'aretz requires B'fani Nechtam or B'fani Nechtam. And then how does Rabbi explain the machlokes between the Tanakama and the Chacham Moirim? It's that the Tanakama holds that since the whole problem is only a get coming from Chutz La'aretz might not be made Lishma, the Takana is only one way. Only if you're maybe from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. But if you're sending from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, the Tanakama holds you don't need to say B'fani Nechtam or B'fani Nechtam. The Chachamim held no, regardless you have to say it because it's Gzera Moilech Atu Maybe. Yes, there's no real chashash, there's no problem with the get that originated in Eretz Yisrael. But once they made it takana, you have to say B'fani Nechtam, B'fani Nechtam, they made it both ways. So that's how Rava carries through the whole Mishnah. Now let's review how Rava carries through the whole Mishnah. Rava learned the whole reason why you say B'fani Nechtam is because we're afraid that we won't be able to find Edim to be Makayim to get. Okay, beautiful. So the question on Rava was, that's B'fani Nechtam. You need to be Mekayim de Chesiva. But why in the world does the Shliach have to say B'fani Nechtam? So for that, the Gemara explained that if you would only say B'fani Nechtam, it would be confused with the Kiyum of all stars. The Kiyum of all stars, such as a star about a Mechira, Matana, Halva, that you need two Eidim to be Mekayim de Shtar. Now, if we're going to allow only one Eid, the Shliach to say B'fani Nechtam, well, people are going to think that all stars, you don't need two Eidim to be Mekayim. You only need one Eid to be Mekayim. So therefore, we make the Eid by Gershon say B'fani Nechtam. B'fani Nechtam is not Kiyum related, so that people would realize, oh, this must be a special takana that only applies to a get. We won't confuse it with regular stars that require two Eidim. That's how Rava learned. Now, how does Rava navigate the three machlokes, Chachamim, Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Lazar? Once again, it's all about if it's Mishkach Shkiach. The question was, the Chachamim said, anything that's close by, Tanakama says, anything that's close by, somehow people will be able to smuggle through the border, they'll be Eidim L'Kaimer. Rabbi Gamliel says, no, if it's really close, it's Muvlois, it's in the V, then they'll smuggle in. But if they're just Rechem and Cheger, which are close by, but not not surrounded, they will not be able to make it back and forth into Eretz Yisrael, and therefore you need to say b'fani nechtam, b'fani nechtam. And Rabbi Lezer came along and said, you cannot make a difference between different cities in Chutz La'aretz. It's a blanket rule. If it's in Chutz La'aretz, you always need to say b'fani nechtam, b'fani nechtam. And how does he navigate the last machlokes between the Chachamim and the Rabbanan? In fact, Rava holds it's not a machlokes. Both agree that both ways require b'fani nechtam, side going into Eretz Yisrael, side leaving Eretz Yisrael. And the Tanakama, even though he said a maybe get, the Tanakama means a maybe and moilach, and that's why the Chachamim piped up at the end and said maybe and moilach to clarify what the Tanakama's opinion was. And those are the two shittas of Rabba and Rava, how to understand our Mishnah. Beautiful. Zok to Gemara Viking. Tanan, we learned to the Brisa. I'm sorry, we learned to Mishnah. This is our Mishnah. And what we're going to do now from our Mishnah is there's going to be one line in the Mishnah that you could be medayikit to be a raya to Rava, and you could be medayikit to be a raya to Rabba, depending on how you want to make the deal. So first the Gemara is going to ask a kasha on Rabba and be medayik the Mishnah to bring a raya to Rava and a kasha on Rabba, and the Gemara is going to say, no, Rabba doesn't be medayik this way, Rabba will be medayik the other way. And then the Gemara goes through the exact same sugya, but backwards. The Gemara is medayik like Rava and asks a kasha on Rabba. I'm sorry, the Gemara is medayik like Rabba and asks a kasha on Rava, and then the Gemara says he's medayik the other way. So let's start this Gemara. Very simple Gemara. Tanan we learned. Hamevi get mi Medina le Medina be Medina Sayam. That's what it says in our Mishnah. If you bring a get from one Medina to another Medina in Medina Sayam, there tzarech loymar b'fani nechta b'fani nechta. So let's be medayik. Dafka be Medina le Medina be Medina Sayam. Do you need to say b'fani nechta b'fani nechta? What if you were bringing a get from one place to another place within the same Medina, in Medina Sayam, like from Toronto to Montreal? There you wouldn't need to say b'fani nechta, b'fani nechta. Let's think about it. Based on this diak, it's telling us that if it's in Chutz La'aretz where nobody is a B'kiyin L'Shma, as long as you can travel easily from one place to another, you don't need b'fani nechta. So the Rava Nicha, according to Rava, it's beautiful because it's all about Kiyum. And since people can easily get from Toronto to Montreal, there will be no problem with Kiyum. But the Rabba, that the problem is Lishma Kasha. What's the difference if people can get easily from Toronto to Montreal? In Toronto, they don't know about Lishma. In Montreal, they don't know about Lishma. So it's still be needed. So the Diak poses a question on Rabba and is a riot to Rava. Dr. Gemara, Rabba says, who said that's what you should be medayik? Maybe be medayik something different. Ella ema the following deal. Dafka Medina Medina Sayam requires b'fani nechta. But Medina Be'eretz Yisrael, but in Eretz Yisrael, even if you're going from one Medina to another Medina, loy tzarech you wouldn't need. And that's because
if somebody brings a get from Lakewood, everybody is
Lakewood too.
If you say bring a get from Lakewood
to where?
To New York.
Okay.
Medina Sayam. In Lakewood, they know the b'fani nechta.
Oh, so now you're asking me, what about in Chutz La'aretz where they are familiar?
Yeah.
So that's a very good point because the Gemara says Ubavel Keret Yisrael, and when we learned the Mishnah that says Ubavel Keret Yisrael, the way I touched it was, and Lakewood is like Eretz Yisrael. So that's exactly what you're saying. In cities where it's quite obvious that they know, maybe this wouldn't be relevant. And we're actually soon going to see at the end of tonight's year that, in fact, when people, as cities became more learned, they relaxed these takanas. So Zok the Gemara, how could you say that the diak from the diak from the Mishnah which says maybe Medina la Medina Medina Sayam, how could you say you make a diak from there that Medina la Medina Be'eretz Yisrael doesn't need? The Mishnah says that beferish. Habehedya katanila. Maybe get Be'eretz Yisrael. Ein tzarich loymar b'fani nechta u'b'fani nechta. So according to Rabba, why would the Mishnah need to say the same chiddush twice? First, from the diuk that Medina la Medina Be'eretz Yisrael, since everyone is bekin b'lishma, no b'fani nechtav is required. And then after the diuk, the Mishnah says it beferish, that if you bring in Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to say. Zokt the Gemara, it's actually necessary to say this halacha twice. Because if we only had the diuk, havamina hanamili di'evet. What if someone shows up with a get and he didn't see the ksiva? He didn't see the chsima. There, okay, you know what? He's coming from Eretz Yisrael. Nunu will accept the get. But lechatchila, when the shliach is getting ready to leave, they'll tell the shliach, you know what? Make sure to see the ksiva. Make sure to see the ksiva. So maybe if the Mishnah only said it in the diuk, we would say that, yeah, if he didn't see the ksiva, didn't see the ksima, we'll accept the get. But lechatchila will tell him, you should see the ksiva, you should see the ksima, so that you will be able to say, b'fani nechtav, b'fani nechtav. Kamash Malon, that no, even lechatchila, if he's going from Medina to Medina in Yisrael, you don't have to see the ksiva, you don't have to see the ksima, you don't need to see it at all. Just get the get and deliver it. Then there was another approach to the Mishnah, which came from exactly the opposite angle, bringing a ride to Rabba against Rava. Medina la Medina be'eretz Yisrael lo tzara. You can be medayik from the Mishnah. Dafka Medina la Medina b'Medinas hayam. Dafka there you need b'fani nechtav. But Medina la Medina be'eretz Yisrael lo tzara. La Rabba nicha, that would be very good according to Rabba, because Medina la Medina be'eretz Yisrael, they're both Bekin Lishma. But La Rava Kasha, because at the end of the day, if it's Medina la Medina in Eretz Yisrael, you still don't have people traveling back and forth, and you're going to have a problem with Kiyum. So Rava will say, no, don't be medayik that way. Medina la Medina be'eretz Yisrael letzarich, aleima haba oyster Medina b'Medina sayam letzarich. Just like Rava so. Rava holds that in the same Medina, in Medina sayam, you don't need. Because according to Rava, the chashash is not lishma, the chashash is kiyum. And in the same Medina, in Chutz La'aretz, there won't be a problem of kiyum. Avol me Medina la Medina be'eretz Yisrael. But according to Rava, what are you going to tell me? That from Medina to Medina in Eretz Yisrael, my tzarech, Rava is going to hold that from Medina to Medina in Eretz Yisrael, you need to say b'fani nechtav. If that's the case, why did the Mishnah say, maybe me Medina la Medina b'Medina sayam? Why did the Mishnah stick in Medina sayam? The Mishnah should have just said, maybe Medina la Medina stam, wherever it is. According to Rava, no matter where it is in the world, even in Eretz Yisrael, if it's from Medina to Medina, you need to say b'fani nechtav. So now the Gemara has a massive bomba chiddush. La'olam mi Medina la Medina be'eretz Yisrael nami lo tzarech. Even Rava, who holds it's all about kiyum shtaris, in Eretz Yisrael, even though there's a border in between and you can't get over, you still don't need to say b'fani nechtav, because ye didn't know how to get through the border. When it comes to doing mitzvahs, ye didn't know how to get through the border. The kivan the ika oile regalim mishkach shchichim. People need to do mitzvahs. Stamazoi, we don't know how to do things, but a yid, when it comes to mitzvahs, it gets a chanaitza, nothing will stop a yid from doing a mitzvah. He has to be oile regel. So I don't care about border, ain't border here. We're going to get through the border because we got to get through. And today in shul, I shared a story about a yid who was crossing the border with a leichter. And when they asked him, what is this? He says, it's a menorah. And the border guy tells him, this is a menorah of the Hand of Chanukah. Does that sound familiar, that story? I heard this story from my barrel. A yid knows how to get through the border. The oilam how to do it.
Yeah, and then he says that today is Yom Kippur.
All right, you're right. That's right. He says, this is a menorah of the Hand of Yom Kippur. That's right. I said it over wrong. I said, today, this is a menorah of the Hand of Chanukah. No, today is a menorah of the Hand of Yom Kippur. That's right. A yid knows how to get through. If it's for a mitzvah, a yid will get it through. And therefore,
that was the head of the border. That was the head of the customs in Toronto.
It Gered Yiddish. In those days, it Gered Yiddish. Han Diretter may be Arabic. Gewaltig. So the Gemara, fine. Henich bezman shebeis hamikdash kam. When the Beis Hamikdash was standing and there was a mitzvah to be oile regel, the Yidden would figure out how to get through the border because they needed to come to the Beis Hamikdash. Because the Yidden don't get through borders. The only time they're unstoppable is when they're doing a mitzvah. It's a Moshe Haskell you see from this Gemara. But Bizman Shein Beis Hamikdash Kaim, after the Churban, Michael and Memar, how are you going to say Shiyaris Mitzuyos? There's no mitzvah of a Lila Regel that's compelling them to break through the border. Zok Gemara, no, even after the Churban Bayis, there was still a mitzvah that was compelling them to go through the border, even though it was illegal. Even the Ika Batei Dinim, the Kvi, you didn't have to go to the Torah. You don't go to our koyes. They go to the Torah. And the Batei Dinim are in the cities of Eretz Yisrael, and sometimes you got to cross a border to get there. Mishkach Shlichi, a Yid will get through. So therefore, in Eretz Yisrael, there's never a problem with moving around, and therefore you don't need to say in Eretz Yisrael, B'fani Nechtav, B'fani Nechtav.
That was then. But today, footman for vacation.
That's right. Tanan we learned. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Afilu mehagmonya lagmonya. And this means, V'omer Rabbi Yitzchak, Ir achas hoysa be'eretz Yisrael. There was a city in Eretz Yisrael, like East Berlin and West Berlin. V'asosiya Shema. And the name of the city was Asosius. V'ayuba beis hagmonya shei makpidim zelzeh. There were two different rulers that didn't like each other. So there was a wall separating one city in half, and you couldn't get over that wall. People on the east side couldn't get to the west side, and people on the west side couldn't get to the east side. And lefichach hutzur chulaymar, that's why the Mishnah says, me'agmonya lagmonya, even from the territory of one ruler to the territory of another ruler within the same city, you'll still have to say, b'fani nechtav, b'fani nechtav. Frak the Gemara, this is a checkmate. L'Rava nicha. According to Rava, I understand why you have to say b'fani nechtav, because since you can't get to the other side of the city, ein edim mitzuyim l'kaimah. But according to Rabba, that it's only about lishma, kosher. Why in the world do you need to say b'fani nechtav from Agmonya Lagmonya? They're both a city in Eretz Yisrael. In both places, they're going to know about lishma. So because of this, we have a major Iber Kerenish right now. The Gemara have to say, Rabba Isle de Rava. Rabba agrees. And Rabba, in fact, says there's a twofold reason that you have to say B'fani Nechtav, B'fani Nechtav. A is because Ein B'kiyim L'Shma, and B is because Ein Edim Mitzuyin L'Kaimah. Now that we have this, actually, it creates a huge thing for us. Because remember, we started today by saying, according to Rabba, we were struggling who holds that you need to have both Ksiva L'Shma and Chasiva L'Shma. And we have to go to Rabbi Yehuda. But now that Rabba holds like Rava, you could say very beautifully. You could say that it's going according to Rabbi Lazar, who holds you only Ksiva L'Shma, and that's why you say B'fani Nechtam. And the reason why you say B'fani Nechtam is because of the Rava's Svar, because you need to be Mekayim. And now it's very simple why you say both. In fact, because if you remember, originally the Gemara said there's three differences between Rabba and Rava. And the differences were dependent upon a very simple thing. Sometimes the problem of Edim L'Kaima is there, but not the problem of L'Shma, like two areas in Eretz Yisrael. And sometimes the problem of Rava is there, of Rabba is there and not Rava. It's a problem of L'Shma, but you can easily get from one place to another, like one Medina in Eretz Yisrael. Now that Rabba agrees to Rava, we're going to eliminate some of the nafkaminas. So Elamai Benayu, Ike Benayu, the Asuya Betrei, if two Edom brought it, there's no problem of Kiyum, but there's still a problem of Lishma. So according to Rabba, it would be a problem. According to Rava, it wouldn't. Inami Ba'isa Medina Medina Sayam. Again, there's no problem of Kiyum, but there's still a problem of Lishma. So come to Chais, wherever Rava says you need to say B'fani Nechtav or B'fani Nechtam, Rabba surely agrees. But there are cases where Rabba holds you need to say B'fani Nechtav, B'fani Nechtam, where Rava would disagree. And where are those cases? Either Asuy Betrei or Ba'isa Medina Medina Sayam. There's no problem of Kiyum, there's only problem of Lishma, and therefore Rabba would hold you need to say B'fani Nechtav, and Rava would hold you don't need to. Beautiful. Tanan, we learned another brayso, another Mishnah. Hamaybe get min Medina Sayam ve'eino yochel loymar b'fani nechtav and b'fani nechtav. What if a shliach brings a get from Medina Sayam and he's not able to say b'fani nechtav or b'fani nechtav? And we'll soon see why he was unable to say it. So the halacha is im yesh alav edim, if he happens to have edim that could be mekayim the get, that could say two edim could come and say we know that this signature belongs to Ruvain and this signature belongs to Shimon. So then what do? You sky b'chaisma. You make kiyum, and the get will be a good get. The Gemara asked on this brisa or on this Mishnah, what exactly does it mean he was unable to be Mekayim? He was unable to be B'fani Nechtav. What was the reason why he was unable to? The Gemara wants to know. So the Gemara says, turning over onto Hey Amar Aleph, Ilay Mecheresh, if he couldn't say B'fani Nechtav because he was a Cheresh, in fact, the Gemara, Cheresh Bar Asuya Gitahu, a Cheresh couldn't even be a Shliach Leilacha because he has to, this Shliach has to do the Gershon. He's doing the Ma'aseh Gershon, he's handing it to the woman. A Cheresh cannot be a Shliach, but now we learned, HaKol Kshem Lovi Saget, Chutz Me Cheresh Shoyte B'Kad. They're not a Bardas, Rashi said. They can't be a Shliach Leilacha. Well, Rabbi Yosef, you know what we're talking about? The Cheresh got the Shlichus from the Pekeh. So there was a Mina Shlichus and he was able to do the Shlichus. But when he got there, he became a Cheresh and he was not able to say it. So therefore, we say, since he can't say it, we will allow just a regular Kiyum. According to Rava, that the reason for B'fani Nechtav is only due to Kiyum. So we've solved that problem. We've mitigated that issue. We were Makayim to get. But Rabba, where there's an additional issue of Lishma, Kasha. How do we know this get was written Lishma? Zog to Gemara, this refers to what Beryl said earlier. This Mishnah that says that you could look away from the Lishma is speaking where, even though it's in Chutz La'aretz, people became educated and they know it needs to be Lishma, like in Lakewood. In fact, the Gemara, if the whole Gzeir is no longer relevant because people already know about Lishma, why does it say if he couldn't be Mekayim, if he couldn't say B'fani Nechtav, then B'di'evet will call him Nadim? Yochel Nami. Once the Gzeir is not relevant anymore, once the Gzeir of Lishma is no longer relevant because people already know the halachas, so even if he was able to say B'fani Nechtav, why should he? Why should he? Let him just bring the get and we'll be Mekayim. Dr. Gemara, Gzeira, Shema, Yachzer, Likol Kulei. We're afraid that people will become ignorant again. People will no longer remember this halacha of Lishma. So therefore, even though technically in a pinch, we will do away with the Gzeira and will allow standard Kiyum, but that doesn't mean we're going to be about the Gzeira. We still want people to continue to say B'fani Nechtav or B'fani Nechtam to avoid a problem if eventually goes back again and people no longer know about Lishma. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished Daf Dalet, and Be'ez Hashem, we will continue tomorrow. Both tomorrow and Monday is holiday schedule, so we're going to learn at 7 a.m. and at 9 a.m. Have a good Tavach, a Mazel Tavach, a Simcha Tavach, a Bracha Tavach, and a Gittin Chodesh.
A Gittin Chodesh.
A good